Trump's attack on public broadcasting, a threat to Americana music. Americana artists are alarmed by Trump's assault on public broadcasting. It's severing a lifeline. A shocking reality. The potential defunding of radio stations that primarily feature American roots music poses a serious threat to the careers of many artists. After spending around 15 years establishing herself as a country noir singer-songwriter, Tammy Nielsen recently received exciting news. Her latest album, Neon Cowgirl, had entered the top 10 of the Americana Music Association's radio chart, joining the ranks of popular artists like Mumford Sons, Tyler Childers, and Alison Krauss Union Station. However, this moment of triumph was swiftly overshadowed by the disheartening announcement that congressional funding for the very radio stations that support Nielsen's genre and contributed to her success was being cut. When I first heard about my chart position, I felt overwhelming joy, gratitude, and appreciation for the community that plays my music, Nielsen shared from her home in New Zealand. But to then learn that they were being defunded was a devastating blow after years of hard work and perseverance. Just 2 weeks ago, Congress approved President Trump's initiative to reduce funding for public broadcasting. This is merely the latest episode in a series of attacks on media outlets that do not align with his administration's narrative. As many in the music industry are beginning to realize, these cuts will soon affect public radio stations dedicated to various genres, including American roots music. In simple terms, without financial support, the music may face an irreversible silence. To broadcast songs, radio stations are required to pay music licensing fees, which have historically been covered by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, CPB, a non-profit organization that provides funding for public radio and television. Due to the funding cuts pushed by Trump, over $1.1 billion that was earmarked for the CPB for the upcoming year and 2027 will be withdrawn, as stated by the organization. While these radio stations also depend on donations to cover licensing fees, a significant portion of the funding previously supplied by the CPB is now lost. On August 1, the CPB announced that it would begin an orderly wind down of its operations following the passage of a federal rescissions package. Current situation. Currently, the CPB allocates grants to numerous public radio stations across the country that focus on Americana music. In addition to over 100 AAA radio stations that play Americana and other genres. One such station is Nashville's WMOT, which features a diverse playlist that includes artists like Childers, classic alt country from Graham Parsons, as well as blues and gospel music. Jesse Scott, the program director at WMOT, indicated that the station requires approximately $200,000 to cover the fees necessary to play their selected music. Without that license, we cannot play music, and we certainly don't want that to happen, Scott emphasized. We aim to be the first step on someone's journey to success. A decline in the number of DJs could also affect the Folk Alliance International FAI folk chart, which has been tracking and ranking releases in the genre for over 25 years. This chart relies on data from community and non-commercial stations, all provided by DJs and listeners. Community radio stations serve as a platform for discovery and allow local audiences to hear artists who may not get airplay on commercial stations, explained FAI Executive Director Jennifer Rowe. Some of these stations may struggle to remain operational, and DJs will lose their platform for sharing music with their communities. Local stations do more than just play records. They also host live performances and inform listeners about upcoming shows by bands and musicians. For artists who don't produce chart-topping hits, local NPR stations are crucial in helping touring musicians connect with audiences who could support them throughout their careers, remarked Mary Gaucher, a seasoned singer-songwriter. It's alarming that this funding reduction could cripple these stations. It's cutting off a vital lifeline. While AI poses its own challenges, This situation is far more concerning. Gaucher, who identifies as gay, also questions whether the government's decision to defund is an attempt to silence artists who oppose the current administration. Most people wouldn't consider this, but it will undoubtedly stifle artists, as we will lose the platform to reach the vast audiences that listen to public radio, she stated. Expressing our thoughts is crucial, and for many of us, our songs are our voice. Looking ahead, in response to the financial shortfall, some stations, like WMOT, are trying to raise funds to make up for the loss. Another potential solution is to seek contributions from wealthy patrons who appreciate public radio. However, at this moment, there are no straightforward solutions, even as Americana music continues to gain popularity and fill prestigious venues more than ever before. In September, the Americana Music Association will celebrate its 25th annual Americana Fest and awards show in Nashville. We're not a political station, Scott from WMOT clarified. We don't cover news. Please don't label us that way. We simply play the music. ... Corporation for Public Broadcasting shuts down after loss of federal funding. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting, CPB, has made a shocking announcement. It will cease operations by September 30th, 2025. Following the loss of all federal funding. This decision was revealed by CPB President and CEO Patricia DeStacey Harrison, who highlighted the dire circumstances resulting from President Trump's recent legislation that rescinded $1.1 billion in public broadcasting funds through the fiscal year 2027. This announcement comes on the heels of a contentious vote last month, which largely fell along party lines, approving significant cuts to public broadcasting as part of a broader $9 billion rescission package requested by the White House. This package also included reductions in foreign aid. Despite hopes from public media advocates that Congress might restore some funding in the upcoming budget year, the Senate Appropriations Committee decided against it last Thursday. In a heartfelt statement, Harrison expressed the disappointment felt by many. Despite the extraordinary efforts of millions of Americans who called, wrote and petitioned Congress to preserve federal funding for CPB, we now face the difficult reality of closing our operations. CPB remains committed to fulfilling responsibilities and supporting our partners through this transition, with transparency and care. Harrison emphasized the vital role public media plays in American society, stating, "Public media has been one of the most trusted institutions in American life, providing educational opportunities, emergency alerts, civil discourse, and cultural connections to every corner of the country." As a result of this funding cut, CPB has informed its employees that most staff positions will be eliminated by the end of the fiscal year. A small team will remain until January to manage compliance, fiscal distributions, and long-term financial obligations, including ensuring continuity for music rights and royalties essential to the public media system. This marks a historic moment, as it is the first time in nearly 6 decades that Congress has chosen not to fund CPB. Established to distribute federal funds to public media stations across the nation, CPB has been crucial for programming and emergency alert systems. The news has sent shockwaves through the public media landscape. Tim Bruno, the general manager of Radio Catskill, an NPR affiliate in New York, expressed his disbelief. "I didn't really see a day where this separate institution, which is set up to serve the public, would be shut down. I don't know what stage of grief I'm in right now." In anticipation of these funding cuts, some stations had already begun laying off staff earlier this summer. For instance, WQED, which operates a TV and classical radio station in Pittsburgh, announced plans to reduce its workforce by 35%. Conversely, some organizations like Nashville Public Media and Louisville Public Media have reported a surge in donations as a response to the cuts. The Trump administration and its supporters in Congress have criticized public media, particularly NPR, claiming it is biased against conservatives and a misuse of taxpayer dollars. However, both NPR and PBS have denied these allegations of bias. While NPR, known for programs like Morning Edition and All Things Considered, relies on federal funds for only a small fraction of its budget, its approximately 1,000 member stations depend significantly on CPB for their operating revenue. This is especially true for stations in rural and economically disadvantaged areas. PBS, which airs programs like PBS NewsHour and children's shows such as Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, receives about 15% of its revenue from federal funding, a figure that is mirrored by its member stations on average. NPR President and CEO Catherine Maher warned that the repercussions of CPB's closure will be felt across all public media organizations, and more importantly, in every community that relies on public broadcasting. She stated, "The ripple effects of this closure, despite the political controversy surrounding public media, a recent Harris poll revealed that a significant majority of Americans, 66%, support federal funding for public radio, with similar sentiments expressed by 58% of Republicans and 77% of Democrats. This poll surveyed 2,089 US adults and has a margin of error of 2.5 percentage points. This situation raises important questions about the future of public broadcasting in America. Will the public continue to support these institutions despite political pressures? How will local communities adapt to the loss of such vital resources? We invite you to share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. The end of CPB, what it means for public broadcasting. Imagine a world where the heart of American culture suddenly stops beating. That's the grim reality facing the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, CPB, a pillar of US media for nearly 6 decades, as it prepares to shut down after Congress pulled the plug on its funding. This isn't just about losing a few TV shows or radio programs. It's about the end of an era that has shaped the nation's educational landscape, cultural identity, and even emergency response systems. But here's where it gets controversial. The closure is a direct consequence of President Donald Trump's relentless targeting of public media, which he claims is spreading political and cultural views that don't align with his vision of America. And this is the part most people miss. The impact will be felt most deeply in small communities across the country, where public radio and TV stations are often the only sources of reliable information and cultural connection. The CPB has been the lifeblood of iconic programs like NPR's All Things Considered, Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and the documentaries of Ken Burns. It's funded both PBS and NPR, ensuring that these platforms could continue to provide high-quality, educational content to millions of Americans. The corporation's end comes after a devastating blow. A budget package that defunded it and a Senate Appropriations Committee decision to exclude its funding for the first time in over 50 years. Despite the outcry from millions of Americans who fought to preserve its funding, the writing is on the wall. The closure will be a phased process, with most staff positions ending by September 30th and a small transition team staying on until January to wrap up loose ends. But what does this mean for the future of public media? NPR stations, which use federal money to pay music licensing fees, will now have to renegotiate these deals. This could be a death knell for outlets that focus on music discovery, as a staggering 96% of all classical music broadcast in the US is on public radio stations. Federal funding for public radio and television has traditionally gone to the CPB, which then distributes it to NPR and PBS stations across the country. Roughly 70% of this money goes directly to these stations, but the impact goes far beyond just the cash. Trump's crusade against the CPB is part of a larger initiative to target institutions that produce content or espouse attitudes he deems un-American. He's even gone after the venerable Voice of America, ending its operations after many decades. In April, he fired 3 members of the CPB's board of directors, a move the fired directors claimed was governmental overreach. So what's next for public media? Will it survive this political onslaught, or will it fade into the annals of history? The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear. The closure of the CPB is a seismic shift in the American media landscape. It's a victory for those who seek to silence dissenting voices, but it's also a call to arms for those who believe in the power of independent, trusted news. So, what do you think? Will public media rise from the ashes, or is this the beginning of the end? The floor is yours. Let's hear your thoughts in the comments.